Welcome to Explore, Explain, Highlights. In this highlights package, we'll be looking at Season 3, Episode 3, with our guest, Jane Zhang, discussing the project, The Food Your Grandmother Made.
I think it's something that I always like to ask people on these episodes to just encourage sketching. And
Yeah,
it's not about art skills, is it? It's
right.
about getting ideas out of your head and logging those ideas. And I guess it's also about logging mistakes and failures and things that you can eliminate from your thinking and logging them
Yeah.
so you are aware of the things that you've covered. Again, can you just sort of speak to how important sketching is for your process and your mindset in these type of pieces?
So I just want to add, I've never gone to art school,
Right.
that gives some credibility, I think. I can't really draw really well. I'm trying to learn, but it is more important about like how you put shape to thoughts
Mm,
because thoughts is very abstract. It's
mm,
not tangible. And I remember asking one of my friends in graphic design, I said, how important is it to know how to draw well? And he said, you just have to know well enough to explain concepts. So that's very vague,
that's
but it's
great.
sort of like, can you do it enough just to explain something?
Yeah.
You don't have to be, an artist to do it. And so the thing, even like writing, I think is very similar. Is when you write something down, you can do something with it, and it's like it's no different than also prototyping. When you have a prototype of something, you can do something to it. But if it
Mm,
stays in your head, you can do nothing to it. You can't talk about what doesn't work or what works. So I think with sketching, it's a very similar idea. Is when I put it on a piece of paper, I can even show it to someone. I can say, hey, what do you think of this? What does it look like to you? Instead of just keeping it in my head, right? So I
yeah.
think you don't have to have certain skills to do it. You just need to be able to express what you're trying to think, what you're thinking about.
Absolutely right. And as
Yeah,
you said, these little mental visualizations that you have are so
yeah,
fleeting. And
that's right.
I mean, what drives me to do my own little note taking or visual sketching is the fear of forgetting a brilliant idea. The
Yeah,
idea that somehow you wake up in the middle of the night and think about something and you'd forget to log it. I'd hate
yeah,
that. I'm sure it's the same with most creative pursuits.
yeah,
Musicians who
yeah.
in the middle of the night think of a riff and then forget to write
Yes.
it down. I mean, imagine that. Now, of course, it was something that was a self-directed project and something that you effectively worked alone on. And to that extent, how would your skill set, and I'm thinking specifically sort of technology skill set, typically sort of shape your choices? Speaking from my point of view, because I don't have advanced programming skills, I'm often drawn towards print projects or static works because, in a sense, my own skill constraints force me down that line. But I also just really enjoy doing print projects. Was this something that you felt would always be a print project because it's benefited the project itself, or do your own skills sort of shape you down that direction anyway?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in telling people to focus on the strengths and not
Hmm.
their weaknesses. I think there's nothing wrong with working on things you're weak and trying to hone it and develop it. But I think sometimes it can get you to a point where it's not productive, I think.
Mm,
And that can be very dangerous, I think.
yeah.
You might put yourself down, you might think you're not good enough. And so the way I approach it and my perspective and mindset is if I can only do certain things, I'm going to do it where other technology cannot do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it so good that other technologies cannot even achieve this result and can't even imagine it, right?
Right.
So that's how I perceive it, and that's how I approach it. I kind of like approach it very um, proactively and optimistically.
Well, no,
Yeah,
I like that, and I think there's something about when you are tackling potentially a novel subject,
yeah,
you've already got enough on your plate, for want of a better term. You've got enough to deal with,
yeah,
besides already also having to accomplish new skills along the way, which is, perhaps too much. When we talk about audiences and people who might use our work, you talk about the future generations of your family as being the kind of primary audience user that you had in mind. And that's quite a hard thing to kind of
yeah.
abstractively sort of join the dots to. But
That's right.
do you feel that in some cases your own sense of you not just making this but using it as well is a good enough proxy for the kind of people who will eventually use it?
Yeah, I think it's such a hard question to do because like there's some of them don't exist yet. They're
Yeah, of
not
course.
necessarily born yet. So it's like I can't ask them even if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I think everything with thinking about the user always starts with an assumption, and usually that's like the best we can do.
Mm,
And I'm more similar to them than my relatives in China
mm,
because English is my stronger language, right? There's certain perspectives I have that my relatives in China don't have. So I think
mm.
I'm a pretty good way to I can relate to them in that way.
Of
Yeah.
course. The recipe cards themselves are extremely visual, and
Yes.
you've essentially got the photo of the dish on one side and then the visualized details of the recipe and the ingredients on the back. What, again, thinking about the photographs, what made you think that this needed a photograph? I mean, it kind of feels obvious, but
Mhm.
you don't have to choose to do that. What made you think this had to be something that's a little glimpse of a rectangle of the plate of the dish?
Yeah. Um, First of all, it's sort of like a good archive project.
Yeah,
You sort of see, oh, this is the kind of plate they used to use. I don't know, maybe
yeah,
like
yeah.
many, many years later on, or this is the table they put stuff on, things, small things like that. I think that whenever I see things like this, I'd always be curious, not about the actual content, but the things
Yeah,
around it. I'll be like, wow, look at that room, look at the
yeah.
decor they had. So I think that was something I wanted to capture. Um, in terms of showing a picture, I think that's what's appetizing about it because my main goal was to make it so that you get excited about making the
Yeah,
food. I really wanted it to be appetizing. And no matter how much data viz you do, it's hard to beat a photo.
it is.
Um, right?
And
You
I
can
think
almost
that,
smell the food.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, and I think there's also something, I don't know whether it's a deliberate metaphor, but almost like if you put it on its side, you've kind of got on the top the food and how it looks, and then below the surface you've got the ingredients. It's almost like two sides of the same coin. But then kind of alongside that, running in parallel, and I spoke before about how you're such a really strong process-minded person, is not just the detailed posting about the process you went through, but also this video, this stop motion video.
Yeah.
So speaking before about the the kind of technical repertoire that you'd normally use, this felt like something a bit of a departure, but a really lovely solution to try and articulate the project itself. So again, what made you think I'll do a stop animation video for this?
Oh, it's just way too complex to explain in text. It just makes
Yeah,
it's a reason why commercials are a thing, right?
yeah,
It's a good way to explain how to use it. It shows the user and it shows some story, and people like passive consumption of information. So video, podcast is a good example. They make the most sense in terms of how to communicate to people. So I sort of have a marketing background, and I always think about the audience and
mm,
what they prefer. And so for me, like video is something I've always wanted to keep doing more of, but it's just really time consuming. But this one made sense because there's so many crazy components to it. There's a bunch of legends. There's many layers. If you just try to explain to that without a visual component or just in text, it's a nightmare.
absolutely. And I think the stop motion works so well as well. It just has that notion of being a kind of analog solution in a digital world, and
Yeah.
here are the different ingredients coming onto screen. I really like it, and I've seen very few like that. So I think it's a terrific output from this work.
Thank you for joining us for this Explore, Explain highlights episode. As always, the full episode is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We hope to see you again soon on another episode of Explore, Explain.